And having a simulated picture of you to go and look at and get used to before surgery really helps ease some of that minor panic that you see when you look in the mirror in the first week after surgery, so that you're not freaking out that you've looked different, because you've been looking at pictures that are very similar of that and get used to that over time before you choose to have surgery. Those two reasons that we're on the same page and you're kind of getting used to your postoperative appearance are where surgical simulations really shine in the consultation process. Now, let's talk about surgery. And it's important to note here that we're really talking about open rhinoplasty. I do all of my surgeries in our surgery center, which is right down below us. I use a general anesthetic primarily for airway protection, but also for comfort, even though minor corrections and minor things we can do either under local anesthesia or local anesthesia with a little bit of sedation. At the beginning of the podcast, we talked about the advances in surgical technology, which have really helped improve not only results, but recovery. And this is where piezo surgery or ultrasonic surgery really comes into play, especially when we're fixing a deviated nose or are taking down a large hump. The bones of the nose need to be cut and moved to help narrow the base, help close the bridge of the nose so that there's not a divot there. And this is where ultrasonic surgery comes into play. I can use the piezo surgery equipment to cut those bones very precisely with no trauma to the soft tissue, which means minimal bleeding, which means less swelling and less pain and faster healing. And I've seen the healing time and certainly the bruising and discomfort from rhinoplasty cut down immensely just by adding this piece of equipment to my standard rhinoplasty surgery. From a time standpoint, to kind of shift gears again, rhinoplasty surgery takes between 2 and 3 hours. You go home the same day, you have a small cast and some tape on your nose. Sometimes we'll use some silicone airway splints to help keep your nasal passages open and avoid them swelling shut right after surgery in that week after surgery. And this is really used if work on the septum has been done. Those are things you can't see. You don't really know they're there. Your nose feels a little bit stuffy, but is not something, it's not like you've got tubes hanging out of the end of your nose. Immediately after surgery, you're going to want to keep your head elevated. You're going to want to lay or sit at between a 30 and 45 degree angle, head a little bit higher than your heart. That's going to help with the swelling, help with some of the discomfort. And I encourage all of my patients to stay on a scheduled pain management plan for the first 48, 72 hours after surgery. What you don't want to do is fall behind with your pain medicine and then have to try and play catch up. From a hygiene standpoint, I'll have you irrigate your nose with some saline spray you can just get at the drugstore for a few bucks to help keep the inside of your nose clean and moistened, and then clean the incisions themselves with some half-strength hydrogen peroxide on a little Q-tip, and then apply a thin layer of antibiotic ointment. That helps to keep those incisions clean, helps keep the kind of gunk from collecting on them, and makes suture removal, which happens at a week, much easier. So at that 1 week mark, the sutures come out, the splint comes off, the airway tubes, if they're inside, come out, and then put some tape on the outside of your nose, which again just helps with some of that early swelling. It's important to plan on avoiding contact sports, avoiding glasses, things like that for the first 6 weeks after surgery to let those bones that we've moved heal, because even something as innocuous and minor as a pair of sunglasses can cause those bones to shift and mean revision surgery down the road. One common recovery question that we get and have to deal with every surgery is, when can you go back to work? And Typically, what I tell patients is that you can return to work after about a week when the cast and all of that comes off. You'll still be swollen, but are able to return to work. Now, if you can work remotely or if you have a job where you're not in front of people, really the only requirement for that is that you're sober. And most patients, after about 72 hours, are able to get to a point during the day where they're alternating back and forth between Tylenol and Motrin and don't need narcotic pain medicine during the day, but is still helpful at night. And so for that kind of work, I would say 3-4 days, but budget a week just to be safe. The other big question is swelling. And rhinoplasty is kind of notorious for swelling after surgery. And that really is the biggest hurdle that rhinoplasty patients have to deal with in the post-surgical time period. The majority of the significant swelling, that's swelling that other people are going to be able to notice, resolves in the first 2 to 3 weeks after surgery. But you will still have some degree of swelling, which is palpable or swelling that you're able to feel for the first year after surgery. And this is where people come in 6 months down the road and say, my nose still feels hard. It still feels numb at the tip. This is more a problem again with open rhinoplasty than closed. The swelling tends to go away a little bit quicker. But a good rule of thumb is rhinoplasty swelling takes a year for things to kind of settle into what they're going to look like long term. The way that the swelling resolves is kind of top to bottom. So starting in between your eyes, it's a good rule of thumb is to divide the nose into quarters. And the swelling between your eyes typically is gone within the first 3 months. The quarter below that, 6 months. The quarter below that, 9 months. And then the tip itself resolves at about a year. So just know going into a rhinoplasty that it does take time for that last 10% of the swelling to go away for that final result to really be visible.